Jake Sanders was an ordinary human explorer with an extraordinary dream to map uncharted planets. His latest mission took him to HFY 7, a lush but deadly world teeming with dangers. Things took a dire turn when his spacecraft malfunctioned and crash-landed in the middle of a dense jungle. Alone, with minimal supplies and no way to call for help, Jake's survival instincts kicked in. He scavenged for food. He noticed the eerie silence around him. Birds and small creatures had disappeared, leaving only the sound of his own breathing. That's when he saw the Valarax. The creature was massive, nearly 3 times his size, with razor-sharp claws, glowing red eyes, and a jaw that could snap metal in half. The Valarax was the apex predator of HFY 7, feared across the galaxy for its lethal hunting skills. Jake froze, his heart pounding as the predator stalked closer, each step a reminder that he was utterly outmatched. But something strange happened. The Valarax stopped. Its glowing eyes locked onto Jake's, not with hunger, but with curiosity. Jake, trembling, slowly backed away, leaving his small bag of food behind as a peace offering. The Valarax sniffed the bag, then grabbed it in its massive jaws and retreated into the jungle. Jake collapsed, both relieved and terrified. The next day, Jake ventured out again, this time with heightened caution. He needed food and water, but his mind was fixated on the Valarax. What had stopped it from attacking him? Was it a fluke, or did it see something in him that even he didn't understand? While foraging near a river, Jake heard a low growl. He spun around to see the Valarax again, watching him from the shadows. It surged through him, but then he noticed something odd. The creature wasn't charging. It was injured. A deep gash ran along its side, oozing dark blood. For a moment, Jake's fear battled with his compassion. Every survival instinct screamed at him to run, but the sight of the mighty predator in pain tugged at his humanity. Slowly, he approached, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I'm not going to hurt you," he whispered, unsure if the creature could understand. The Valarax growled softly, but didn't move. Taking it as a sign, Jake pulled out a small medical kit from his pocket. He cleaned the wound, applied a makeshift bandage, and stepped back. The Valarax huffed, its red eyes studying him. Then, without a sound, it disappeared into the jungle. Over the next few days, Jake noticed a pattern. Wherever he went, the Valarax wasn't far behind. It watched him from a distance, never threatening but never leaving either. At first, Jake was uneasy. Was it waiting for the right moment to attack? But as time passed, he began to see it differently. The Valarax started bringing him gifts: fresh fruit, edible roots, and even water-filled leaves. In return, Jake shared his rations and spoke to it, even if it couldn't understand. He named it Shadow, a nod to the way it silently followed him. Their bond deepened when Jake stumbled into a nest of venomous vine snakes. The creatures hissed and lunged, their fangs dripping with deadly poison. Jake was cornered with no weapon to defend himself. Out of nowhere, Shadow appeared, roaring so loudly the ground seemed to shake. The snakes scattered, terrified of the predator. Jake stared in disbelief as Shadow turned to him, its glowing eyes almost protective. "You saved me," Jake said, his voice filled with awe. Weeks turned into months. Jake and Shadow became inseparable, a team navigating the dangers of HFY 7 together. Shadow taught Jake how to avoid predators and find safe food, while Jake treated Shadow's wounds and kept it company. But their peaceful coexistence was shattered when an alien hunting ship landed nearby. The crew, armed with high-tech weapons, had one goal: capture or kill the Valarax. Jake overheard their plans and felt a surge of anger. "They don't understand you," he told Shadow that night. "They think you're just a monster." The next morning, the hunters closed in. Jake knew Shadow could fight, but against their advanced weaponry, even the mighty predator stood little chance. Jake stepped out from the jungle, confronting the hunters before they could attack. "Leave this planet," he demanded. The hunters laughed. "Why protect a killer?" "Because it's more than that," Jake said firmly. "Shadow saved my life. It's intelligent, loyal, and it's my friend. If you harm it, you'll have to go through me." The hunters hesitated. Jake's courage, combined with the sight of the Valorax standing calmly by his side, made them rethink their assumptions. Reluctantly, they left, muttering about crazy humans. As the ship flew away, Jake turned to Shadow, a smile spreading across his face. "They didn't stand a chance against us," he said. Shadow let out a low growl that Jake swore sounded like laughter. Months later, Jake was finally rescued. As he prepared to leave HFY 7, Shadow stood at the edge of the jungle, watching. "I'll miss you, buddy," Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'll make sure the galaxy knows the truth about you." The Valorax let out a powerful roar, a farewell that echoed across the jungle. Jake boarded the rescue ship, leaving behind not just a planet, but a friend who had taught him the true meaning of trust and courage. Lara Bennett loved animals, no matter how big, small, or terrifying. As a xenobiologist, her job was to study alien creatures across the galaxy. But when she was sent to the remote jungle world of Joreth 9, this was the home of the Zarnok, the galaxy's most feared predator. No one had ever studied one up close and lived to tell the tale. The Zarnok were known for their shadowy forms, razor-sharp claws, and silent attacks. Alien miners who tried to exploit Joreth 9's resources often vanished, their camps reduced to ruins. Most people believed the Zarnok were mindless killers. Lara, however, was determined to find the truth. On her first day in the jungle, Lara moved cautiously, her scanner in hand. She found claw marks on trees, tracks in the mud, and even the bones of unfortunate prey. But she also noticed something strange patterns in the jungle's layout. It seemed organized, as though the Zarnok weren't just predators but caretakers of their environment. As she ventured deeper, she came across a small, muddy pool. A weak, high-pitched whimper caught her attention. Looking closer, she saw a Zarnok pup trapped in the mud, struggling to free itself. Lara hesitated. The pup was small but still dangerous. Its sharp teeth and claws gleamed in the sunlight. Yet it was clearly in distress. Against her better judgment, Lara moved closer. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice steady but gentle. "I'm here to help." Using a sturdy branch, she carefully pulled the pup free. It growled weakly but didn't attack. Lara bandaged its injured leg and left it some food before retreating to a safe distance. She expected the pup's parents to show up any moment, furious at her interference, but nothing happened. For hours, she watched as the pup slowly ate the food and limped back into the jungle. The next day, Lara continued her research, keeping an eye out for any signs of danger. She didn't have to look far. She collected samples near a waterfall. The jungle grew unnaturally quiet. She turned to see a full-grown Zarnok stepping out of the shadows. Its sleek black body shimmered in the dappled sunlight, and its golden eyes locked onto hers. Lara froze, certain this was the end. But instead of attacking, the Zarnok tilted its head and sniffed the air. It moved closer, sniffing her bag where she still had some bandages and leftover food. Then it let out a low, rumbling growl, not threatening, but curious. Realizing it might be the pup's parent, Lara slowly extended her hand, palm up. "I helped your little one," she said softly. "I'm not your enemy." The Zarnok watched her for a moment longer before turning and disappearing into the jungle. Lara let out a shaky breath. Over the next few weeks, Lara noticed she was no longer alone in the jungle. The adult Zarnok, which she nicknamed Shadowfang, often followed her at a distance, watching her work. At first, she was nervous, but it never acted aggressively. In fact, it started bringing her gifts, strange fruits, shiny stones, and once even a small vial of alien sap, which turned out to have healing properties. Lara realized Shadowfang wasn't just observing her, it was trying to communicate. Slowly, they built a fragile bond. Shadowfang seemed to understand her movements, and even her words, responding with growls, head tilts, or flicks of its tail. One day, while exploring a rocky ravine, Lara discovered something shocking. Deep in the jungle, hidden beneath vines and rocks, was an alien mining outpost. Machines were tearing apart the land, and toxic waste spilled into the rivers. The miners were back. That night, Lara sat by her campfire, thinking about what she had seen. The Zarnok weren't attacking out of mindless aggression, they were defending their home. The mining operations were destroying their food sources, polluting their water, and driving them to desperation. Shadowfang appeared at the edge of her camp, watching her with those piercing golden eyes. Lara felt a surge of determination. "They're hurting your world," she said. "We have to stop them." The Zarnok growled softly, as if it understood. The next day, Lara and Shadowfang began their mission. Using her knowledge of the miners' equipment and Shadowfang's agility, they sabotaged the machines one by one. Shadowfang's stealth and speed were unmatched, allowing them to stay ahead of the miners. But the miners soon caught on. Armed with advanced weapons, they set traps throughout the jungle, determined to kill the Zarnok and anyone helping them. In the final confrontation, Lara and Shadowfang found themselves cornered. The miners had brought in reinforcements, their weapons aimed at the pair. "You don't understand!" Lara shouted. "They're not monsters, they're protecting their home. You're the invaders." The miners laughed, their leader stepping forward. "It's just a beast. It doesn't matter." Before he could fire, Shadowfang let out a deafening roar. From the shadows, more Zarnok emerged, silent, deadly, and united. Lara stood beside them, unarmed but unafraid. The miners retreated, overwhelmed by the Zarnok's numbers and their sheer ferocity. Lara knew this wasn't just about survival, it was about sending a message. When the dust settled, the jungle was quiet again. Lara knelt beside Shadowfang, placing a hand on its sleek head. "We did it," she said. The Zarnok growled softly, its golden eyes full of something Lara could only describe as gratitude. As she prepared to leave Joreth 9, Lara knew she had made a difference. The Zarnok weren't mindless killers, they were guardians of their world. And thanks to her, the galaxy would finally understand. The distress signal came in the middle of Captain Sam Ryder's patrol mission. A colony on the planet Yalthor 5 had gone silent, and the Galactic Council feared the worst. The planet was known for one thing, the Clythar. These towering, reptilian predators had wiped out entire settlements in the past. Now, Sam's rescue team was tasked with investigating the colony's fate. When they arrived, the colony was eerily quiet. Buildings stood intact, but there was no sign of life. Sam and his team moved cautiously, weapons drawn. The silence was broken by the distant, blood-curdling roar of a Clythar. Sam's team exchanged nervous glances. "Stay sharp," he ordered. As they searched, they found a young girl hiding in the ruins of a marketplace. Her clothes were torn, her face smeared with dirt, but she was alive. She stared at Sam with wide, frightened eyes. "You're safe now," Sam said gently. But before they could leave, the girl whispered, "You can't hurt them." The team froze. "Hurt who?" Sam asked. "The Clythar," she said, her voice trembling. "They're not bad. They're protecting us." Sam frowned. "Protecting?" The Clythar were legendary predators, known for their ferocity. But the girl insisted. She told them her name was Lila and explained how, when the colony was attacked by alien poachers, the Clythar had fought back. "The poachers wanted to steal our resources," Lila said. "The Clythar stopped them. They saved me." Sam struggled to believe her. The Clythar were supposed to be monsters, but Lila spoke of them as guardians. As they prepared to leave, a shadow fell over them. From the edge of the forest, a massive Clythar emerged. It stood nearly 4 meters tall, its green scales gleaming, its eyes glowing in eerie amber. The team raised their weapons, but Lila stepped in front of them. "No!" she cried. "He's my friend." Sam held up his hand, signaling the team to lower their guns. The Clythar didn't attack. It moved slowly toward Lila, letting out a low, rumbling growl. "He's the leader," Lila whispered. "I call him Father." Sam couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Clythar, this terrifying predator, gently nudged Lila as if checking she was unharmed. That night, Sam sat with Lila, listening to her story. She described how the poachers had landed months ago, destroying the colony's defenses and enslaving its people. When the Clythar appeared, the poachers fought back with advanced weapons, but the predators had overwhelmed them. "The Clythar didn't hurt us," Lila said. "They only fought the ones with guns." Sam began to see the Clythar in a new light. They weren't mindless killers, they were protecting their territory and, strangely, the people within it. The next morning, Sam explored the forest, Lila and the Clithor leader by his side. He saw signs of battle, broken weapons, claw marks on trees, and patches of scorched earth. But he also saw something unexpected: nests built by the Clithor, carefully hidden and filled with eggs. They have families, Sam realized aloud. The Clithor leader growled softly, as if confirming his thought. Suddenly, the forest erupted with the sound of engines. A new group of poachers had arrived, their ships descending from the sky. They were heavily armed, determined to claim the planet's resources and kill anything in their way. Sam's team regrouped, ready to fight, but the poachers had brought advanced weaponry that outmatched their standard-issue gear. The Clithor leader let out a thunderous roar, and the other predators emerged from the shadows, ready to defend their home. "Captain, what's the plan?" one of his crew asked. Sam glanced at the Clithor, then at Lila. "We fight with them," he said firmly. His team hesitated. Fighting alongside the galaxy's most feared predators went against every instinct. But Sam's confidence inspired them. The battle was fierce. The poachers' weapons tore through the jungle, but the Clithor moved with deadly precision, using their strength and agility to outmaneuver the attackers. Sam and his team provided covering fire, working in tandem with the predators. Leela stayed hidden, but she watched with awe as her father fought to protect her. When the dust settled, the poachers were defeated. Their ships lay in ruins, and those who survived fled into the jungle, never to return. Sam approached the Clithor leader, who was injured but still standing tall. "You're not the monster they say you are," he said. The Clithor growled softly, its amber eyes meeting Sam's. In that moment, Sam felt a strange connection, a mutual understanding that they both wanted the same thing: to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Back at the colony, Sam and his team helped the survivors rebuild. Leela stayed with the Clithor, who continued to watch over the area. Before leaving, Sam made a promise to the Galactic Council. The Clithor are not enemies. They're guardians. We need to protect them as much as they protect this world. As his ship lifted off, Sam looked out the window, watching the Clithor leader fade into the jungle. Elena Carter was not a warrior, a scientist, or a diplomat. She was a mechanic, sent to the distant planet of Gravor 3 to repair mining equipment. The planet's surface was covered in jagged cliffs and endless mist, giving it an eerie, unwelcoming feel. But what made Gravor 3 truly terrifying were the Gorlaks, massive creatures with armored scales and venomous tails. Miners called them Death Incarnate. Elena wasn't supposed to interact with the Gorlaks. Her job was fixing machines, not dealing with deadly beasts. But that changed one evening when her repair shuttle malfunctioned, stranding her miles away from the mining base. The sun had set and the mist thickened. Elena's flashlight cut through the fog as she tried to find shelter. She heard a low growl behind her and froze. Slowly, she turned and saw a Gorlak emerge from the shadows. The creature was enormous, with glowing blue eyes and claws that could shred metal. Elena's heart pounded as the Gorlak stalked closer. She braced for an attack, but the beast stopped just a few feet away, sniffing the air. To her shock, it didn't pounce. Instead, it limped, revealing a deep wound on its leg. Elena's fear clashed with her compassion. She knew this creature could kill her in an instant, but its injury pulled at her heart. Slowly, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small medical kit. "I'm not going to hurt you," she whispered, her voice trembling. The Gorlak growled softly but didn't move as she knelt beside it. With shaky hands, she cleaned the wound and wrapped it in bandages. The creature flinched but didn't lash out. When she finished, she stepped back cautiously. The Gorlak stared at her for a moment before retreating into the mist. Elena collapsed, her body shaking with relief. The next morning, Elena began her long trek back to the mining base. She expected to be alone, but every so often, she caught glimpses of the Gorlak in the distance. It was following her, though it kept its distance. A T first, she was uneasy. Was it waiting for her to drop her guard? But as hours passed, she realized it wasn't a threat. If anything, it seemed to be protecting her. When a pack of smaller predators attacked her, The Gorlak charged in, scattering the creatures with a roar. Elena watched in awe as her unlikely guardian returned to her side, growling softly as if to check she was unharmed. "Are we friends now?" she asked, half joking. The Gorlak tilted its massive head, almost as if it understood. Back at the base, the miners were preparing for a major operation to expand their territory. But the expansion would encroach on the Gorlak's nesting grounds, and the miners saw the creatures as nothing more than obstacles. "They're dangerous pests," said Garvin, the mining foreman. "We'll drive them out with sonic cannons." Elena couldn't stay silent. "They're not pests," she argued. "They're intelligent, and they only attack because we're invading their home." Garvin scoffed. "You're defending those monsters? They've killed dozens of miners." "They're protecting their territory," Elena shot back. "If we keep pushing them, it'll only get worse." Her pleas fell on deaf ears. The miners launched their operation the next day, sending teams into the mist with heavy machinery and weapons. Elena couldn't stand by and watch. She returned to the cliffs, searching for the Gorlak she had helped. It wasn't long before she found it, or rather, it found her. The creature stepped out of the fog, its blue eyes glowing with recognition. "I need your help," she said. The Gorlak growled, its massive tail swishing through the air. Together, they moved toward the mining site. When they arrived, chaos was already unfolding. The sonic cannons had enraged the Gorlaks, and the creatures were attacking the miners in a desperate bid to protect their nests. Elena stood between the miners and the Gorlaks, shouting for the fighting to stop. "Listen to me," she yelled. "They're not monsters, they're just trying to survive." Garvin pointed his weapon at her. "Get out of the way, Carter. This is suicide." Before he could fire, the Gorlak stepped beside Elena, letting out a deafening roar. The miners froze, their weapons trembling in their hands. But instead of attacking, the Gorlak stayed still, its eyes fixed on the miners. "It doesn't want to fight," Elena said firmly. "We can coexist, but only if we stop treating them like enemies." Her words, combined with the Gorlak's restraint, made the miners hesitate. Slowly, they lowered their weapons. In the days that followed, Elena worked tirelessly to negotiate a truce. She convinced the miners to redirect their expansion efforts and leave the Gorlak's nesting grounds undisturbed. In return, the Gorlak stopped attacking the mining operations. Elena's bond with the Gorlak grew stronger. She named it Mist Shadow, a nod to its silent movements through the fog. When her repair shuttle was finally fixed, Elena prepared to leave Gravor 3. Mist Shadow watched her from the edge of the cliffs, its glowing blue eyes filled with what she could only describe as sadness. "I'll come back," she promised. The Gorlak let out a low growl, a sound she had come to recognize as approval.